Shamus Conneely, man, welcome.
How you doing?
Man, I'm happy to have you here. You and me got in the business right around the same time. When did you get into actual real estate brokerage side?
Brokerage, full-time brokerage around 2014.
Do you remember how we first met?
With a bank deal, right?
No, I don't think you remember this.
Or was it in Elk Grove?
Yes.
That's it. Elk Grove. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So that was pre-brokerage. That was with my family development business.
You guys development.
Yeah,
we
were the developer over there. Yeah.
What is Real Time Sports, the Belvedere, all that in Elk Grove?
Belvedere Plaza. Yeah.
You guys owned Real Time Sports for a while, right?
We did. We were bought out by our partners a few years back.
Nice.
Who still own the business over there. Good family.
Is it cool owning a sports bar like that? That was a pretty cool bar. I remember going.
It was fun. It was fun. We opened a second one in the heart of the downturn in 2008, which wasn't quite as fun. We did it because at the time we were trying to figure out where was actual revenue flowing in from, and we said, let's repeat this. So we went out to St. Charles and did a second version of it, which was bigger. Didn't lose money, didn't make money. So after about 2 years, we shut the doors.
Gotcha. So that would have been 2008.
2008 was when we opened it.
No, actually, that might have been sooner. So I remember the client we were working with is Greater O'Hare Association.
Yeah.
And we were trying to put him in your guys' second floor space above the retail over there.
That might have been before 2008.
It
right?
might have been, yeah.
That might have been before the downturn even hit, I think, was it?
Yeah, it was before the downturn. So that's where we first met. And then,
that's right.
Then you represented our current, he still owns that building in West Chicago.
Yeah.
For the 15 units,
Yeah.
John McHale.
Yeah, John, I'm still working with John on a lot of stuff. John's a great guy.
Oh, he is awesome. I actually got to talk to him later on today about something. But he's always been great to deal with. So,
yeah.
You went to school where'd you go to school? You went to DePaul, you went for finance, I think, right?
Yeah, DePaul had a finance degree and graduated in 2000, Y2K.
Why finance? Like what took you down that route? Was it with thinking about real estate? Was it thinking about the family business?
Yeah. Obviously entrepreneurial background. My dad and mom came from Ireland in the late 60s, and my dad was a carpenter, built a home building business. So I grew up on a construction site and, always had in my mind that I'd be some form of an entrepreneur. So I figured the finance degree would be something flexible. Got some advice from, mentors throughout my life as a young guy. And they said, hey, you want a flexible degree? Finance is a flexible degree. So oddly enough, I started out as a psych major, abandoned that quickly, was thinking about accounting, took one cost accounting class and said, forget about this. So focused on finance after that.
Man, if I could do it again, I always tell people this is like, I would go for finance because you could use it for so many different places, and maybe even a secondary or a minor in like psychology to be a better husband.
Right. Or to just be a better real estate guy, right? Because you definitely deal with a lot of psychology. In management, I'm sure every day you're dealing with some form of psychology.
My fitness trainer, he's got a psychology background, and I'm like, man, like he knows how to like get to us in different ways, and like I always think about like, man, it's kind of like the ninja selling, like
full-time trainer, part-time therapist.
Yeah. Like he knows how to get us to do what we need to do, and want us to and get us to want to do it. So
sure,
that's a trick. You grew up in the family business, second generation, like we just said. How did that influence where you're at today? Was it were you in love with it in the beginning? Some people are like, I want to be further away from that. Like,
yeah, I would say I was the first in my family to go to college. I had an older brother who's a custom home builder in town, does really well. Greenside Design Build. There's a drop for him if he's out there. And he was always kind of taking the lead on most stuff. Anytime we did a job, I was working with him. So I kind of wanted to branch out on my own and always figured I'd come back, just didn't know when. So I actually didn't come straight into the family business out of college. I was a banker for a couple of years with LaSalle Bank. Went through their credit training program there, which was been invaluable throughout my career. But I always knew I'd come back somehow to real estate, right? I compare it to people who grow up in the restaurant industry. If you grow up in this business, it's just kind of in you, right? And you think a certain way, you act a certain way because of it. And I always knew I'd come back, and I came back at a time when things were really good. I had about a 5-year run for that where I thought, I was the smartest young real estate guy in town in 2007, 2008. explain to me quickly why I wasn't, you know?
Man, I remember having conversations with in 2005, guys that have been in the business 30 years, and me with my cockamamie, different ways to make money and flip real fast and all this stuff. And me walking away from this conversation thinking like, man, what idiots those guys are. And in hindsight, I actually made a couple apologies for like, I'm sorry I even brought that ever to you like later on in my career where no, I know that, in 2000, between 2000 and 2008, like it was hard not to make money.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, you'd have to fall over yourself to not make money.
Oh man, it gave us such a false sense of heck. All you do is close with the property, and you walked away with $10,000 from the closing table. Like,
and you could build anything. You know, I was building custom homes at the time, and obviously I knew what I was doing. But you know, it wasn't very hard to sell something, even if it wasn't a perfect design or a perfect plan or a perfect location. You could still find a buyer for it. So, you know, I think a lot of what we learned in 07, 08, 09 are valuable things to hold throughout, you know, your career for upswings, downturns, the whole nine.
A lot of real estate people came into this. A lot of people in our network and in the podcast network and that we managed for came into this post. They had the opportunity to buy because of what we went through as far as those pains go.
Sure,
but they don't know like that feeling that like everything just dried up. But for me, I was doing brokerage. I had to have at least 30 deals under contract, and I think one of them closed. Yeah. And that was only because like I got to figure out how to get this one deal closed because I got to pay my mortgage next month. Right. like problem.
Yeah, necessity is the driver, right, of innovation. But I agree with you. I think I see it a lot now. Anyone who entered the industry after that, it's good for them, right? That they have almost like a blissful ignorance, I guess. But sometimes I feel like it's an anchor. You know, it's good for us to have that knowledge, but it does slow me down sometimes because I think I'm cross-checking some risk factors that other people might not, you know?
Well, I don't know about you, but for me, I'm always trying to read between the lines because I think we all looked back in 2010, 11, like, wow, we knew this was going on, but we had no clue all the other things were going on and really what that really meant.
Yeah.
And now it's like, you always try reading between the lines and trying to figure out, is that going to be turning into something like that that's going to create some sort of bubble? Like, so I think too much about some of that stuff, which is why I don't watch the news anymore because then I get my own way.
Agreed. I just bailed out on my Instagram and Facebook accounts last month because I was getting too scatterbrained from it. You know what I mean?
The news is something that I gave up. I think it's probably about 6-8 years ago now, and it's been great. You know, there's like some crazy thing going on, like a war starting or something like that. I might tune in out of interest, but the daily news is so skewed, and it's just such a distraction.
It weighs you down, right?
Yeah. Talk about an anchor. You worked at the bank. Mm-hmm. You had a finance degree. What did you kind of take away in hindsight from working at the bank that's helped you as a commercial broker today?
Well, interestingly, for real estate is that I wasn't doing any real estate lending there. I was a commercial and industrial lender, C&I lender, and I was at LaSalle where
what's a C&I lender? Just so for
commercial and industrial lender, so a business banker at a certain loan amount and above.
Gotcha. For small
businesses, you know, we were dealing with businesses that were, you know, loan sizes anywhere from $3 million up to $50 million, gotcha. Right? And so it could be a first generation business up to a third generation business where you're advising at different levels as you go along, right? And I think what I took most away from that had nothing to do really with real estate. It was that all of those relationships were built as relationships for lending, right? So you were really focused on who you were working with. You were really focused on building trust with them because at the end of the day, you were somewhat of a commodity as a banker, right? And if you can all offer the same rates and all offer the same structure, it really comes down to, can you manage that relationship well? Can you get along with the people? So I think I took that with me, not only in brokerage now, but when I was building and developing, you know, your relationships with all your vendors, your relationships with all your past clients, all reflects what kind of success you'll have in the future, you know?
What is it about building relationships that you think you're good at?
I think I'm trustworthy, right? At least I have been throughout my career, so I think that has a lot to do with it. But, you know, I've always been a social person. I think I grew up in an Irish family where storytelling and, you know, hanging out together was a big factor. My dad was one of 5 boys and 5 girls. The 5 girls stayed in Ireland. The 5 boys all came here. One was in Boston. But growing up, I had a lot of cousins, a lot of different personalities that you figured out how to get along with over the years. And I think it just was an innate part of my personality that I was always able to meet someone, find a way to, at least get along with them for a few minutes. And I think that builds trust and makes people feel comfortable that you have the right intentions with whatever you're working on with them.
Like and trust. People want to do business with people they like and trust.
Yeah, well, and going back to the downturn, I mean, that was a time where you had to do business with maybe some people you didn't necessarily love to do business with, but it was the only business out there, right? And, Tim Green, president of our company, we've become very good friends over the years, and that's something we always talk about. Is like, man, remember when we had to do business with really bad people for a while, right? It's so refreshing when things are good that you can actually have a choice on who you're doing business with, right?
You ultimately been with the same firm for a long time.
Yep.
How did you end up there? That's the only firm you've been with?
Yeah. Well, so I had my own license and my own real estate company. I think actually when we worked together, you were probably working with Conneely Real Estate. Yep. Back in Oak Grove. So I had carried my own license for a long time. It was really to represent ourselves on our own development and real estate transactions. But we had a bad condo deal amongst a number of struggling deals coming into 2007 and 2008. And I spent probably 3 to 4 years trying to figure out a way through it, way out of it, working things out with our lenders and, going through those painful processes. And in 2012, we were finally able to transact out of it. It was intended to be a 108 unit, 6-building development. We got 1 building built, 18 units per building. We had a handful of contracts in the building as 2007 hit. Decided not to take the contracts because, the early sales in a condo development pre-bust were the beginning, and, your sale prices were climbing from there on. At that time, we were like, well, this is probably the top, and we're looking at nothing but decreasing prices if we want to sell out of this thing. So negotiated our way into leasing the whole building out with our lender, which, gave us a performing loan and a non-performing loan, and kept the deal healthy for us and our lender, but still had to find a way to transact out of it. And Tim Green was actually brokering the deal at the time, brought me the buyer. And you might know 𝗬𝘃𝗲𝗀𝘀. Joel used to be with us for a while. He's down in Texas now working for 𝗬𝘃𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀. But they both brought me the buyer. And it took like a year to get the deal done. Obviously, I had plenty of incentive to get it done, so I was pretty focused on getting there. When we finally made the transaction complete, the group who bought it had hired me to general contract the next building. So there's now 2 buildings there. That we built that second building as condos. They sold out of those. But after that transaction, Tim called me one day and he said, "Hey, I'm tearing down this business model that we had that's X amount of years old and rebuilding the business with a new brand." And I think he had a list of 500 points that they wanted to change about the company, and they systematically went through it. And he said, "We're trying to grow our commercial team. Would you like to jump on board?" And obviously I was a developer at the end of his rope. I said, "Well, I'm a broker now because I have no money left, so I've gotta focus on that." And I said, "If you don't care that I'm still building some stuff, then I'll jump in." So I jumped in, and I was kind of part-time general contractor, part-time broker for about a year, 2 years, and then went full bore after that. And that was really it. I had lunch with him, sat down, and we actually figured out that we went to college together for about a year and knew a handful of the same people back at DePaul. And he said, "Look, it's really, I don't have a game plan necessarily on targets for what I'm looking to do with the team I'm building. It's just if it fits organically, I'm offering people a job and I figure out how they fit in." So he said, "You'd be a great fit for this commercial team." That's how I joined. And at the time, or right before I got there, he had hired 𝗬𝘃𝗲𝘀𝗁𝘁, who's our COO. She came over from 𝗬𝘁𝗲𝗀𝗵𝘁 Development. Christine Noren, Christine's title escapes. She just kind of does everything. She came from the city of Naperville, so we've got development and planning backgrounds that Tim knew really well from his career just as a broker. And a few years later, he hired Scott Parker, from 𝗬𝘃𝗀𝗃 to be the sales manager, and they've done a great job. I mean, we've got 7 people on our commercial brokerage team, but midway through last year, I think there was 215 residential brokers. So he's built a really solid position in Naperville and the surrounding market. I think it's largest market share now out there.
The broker's been around for a while.
68 or 69.
69.
John Green started it. He moved out from Marquette Park in the city out to Naperville and started connecting farmers to developers and building his team there.
It always makes so much sense in hindsight, right? The Shodines out there in Geneva with their farmland and like it's crazy. But think about right now though. You and me would not go out to DeKalb and start buying a few hundred acres. I don't think. At least I am not prepared to do that.
You know,
or Maple Park or Elbert.
I'm at a weird point in the cycle where I'm like, if you would have talked to me 3-4 years ago, I'd say it's a crazy idea, and now I'm kind of like, maybe there's a space for some land speculators out there now, simply because I'm sure you see the demand factors on housing. Like our residential team tells me all the time, it's not a matter of buyers, it's a matter of inventory, high rate environment or not, right? So for years, I'm a scarred developer who said I would never play around with that again, but every year that goes by, it seems like there's space growing and growing and growing, needing someone to do that. Problem is you got to find a lender to back you on it, right?
Chicago being such a huge metro area, you kind of got all sides short of Indiana and Lake Michigan. Like, which direction you think, as if you're going to, I'm asking you to take the crystal ball out, like which direction you think, the south, southwest, the west, like where do you think we're going to expand to the most? Where's that speculation?
Well, I mean, what I'm seeing is Southwest. Obviously, we do a lot of work in Plainfield. We're working on a couple sizable industrial transactions out there now, and that I-55 corridor is a great job growth corridor. So, Joliet, Romeoville, there's a lot of activity out there in that 55 corridor. South, I mean, I grew up on the south side. I grew up in Lamont. Lamont obviously is active. But as you go further east, those southeast suburbs have slowed over the years, losing population to northwest Indiana. So, I mean, northwest Indiana has definitely boomed the past 5-6 years. So those are the markets I would say. And, I think you follow the highways and you follow the job growth.
Well, when you go down, just say 355 extension, so down in your old stomping grounds where you grew up, there's a lot of open land still.
Yep.
And some of it's commercial and all that, but is the stuff just being held on too tightly where they want too much that to develop? Because if you look at what's Route 6, like by the hospital, like down like so much land there. Like, why is there not tons of townhouses and house popping up? Why is that?
Well, I think we're just getting to the point where home builders are turning significant dirt again. For almost a decade, we had just a developed lot supply where they didn't have to turn dirt. They could come in and buy a developed lot below replacement value, right? And, if it cost you less to buy that developed lot, then why would you buy land and turn dirt to create a new lot, right? And I think until that developed lot supply got gobbled up, which I think all of the really desirable lots probably 2 years ago finally got built up or spoken for, now they're starting to turn dirt. So you will see out in that corridor, I'll tell you this, if they were allowed to build industrial on all that land, it probably would have been built already, right? Because there was so much demand, but not everyone could get their entitlements down there for industrial. Like New Lenox, I know, was pushing back on it, but there's a few sites down there that over the next 2-3 years, you'll see them clicking.
Staying on the home builder side of things, do you see them still going back, now that they're turning dirt, like what type of subdivision sizes is like? They're building massive 11, 12, 1,300 site developments. Like, will we return to that, you think? Or is that just, that was pre-recession that they don't want to bite you off more or they can't get lending for that?
No, I think you'll see some of it happening. We're working on some stuff right now that's large acreage. I think the difference between now and the early 2000s is there's no Mike Conleys really left. There's only a handful of small builders left or mid-sized builders, and they're not really focused on competing with the nationals at their same level. So they might develop a little infill piece, They're going to do tear down lots. They're going to focus on some custom stuff. But the only real scalable developers left are the national home builders when it comes to home building. So, the 𝗤𝘃𝗀𝗀s, the Lennars, the D.R. Hortons, and 𝗦𝘃𝗶𝗶𝗵𝘁, and those four really cover most of it. So they'll be turning dirt, but you won't see the smaller guys doing it.
Well, you see, we all Crown Development, like they've done a couple of these bigger subdivisions, but they have a different strategy than the national builders, where they'll go into a development and this is what we're going to do for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And they do areas at a time, and they have a much different turntable than I got to make $12,000 per unit and I got to turn this many units. So I find the strategies of the national builders to be, obviously more cookie cutter and short term profits, but I don't know. I don't see the lending environment there as quick as those would have been in the past.
Well, Crown, obviously, it's private wealth, and they probably don't need a lender, right?
They are the lender. They are the bank.
Yeah. So it's a long term, investment play for them. And what's great about what they do is they will bring a small builder in, and he can tip off a handful of lots and build a nicer house, right, than you get from a national. But where the nationals are in a great advantage right now is that they can buy down those rates, and they buy them down for the life of the loan, and it makes it attractive for the buyer, and they can get people in the home. Whereas even a smaller guy, if he has some type of buy down program, it's a short term reset, and they've got to be able to refi afterwards. So I think the nationals know that as long as no one starts cutting price instead of buying down rates, that they're in the catbird seat for the foreseeable future in terms of capturing all the demand here, because they're the ones who can turn out the volume.
What's the most buy down you've seen as far as rates go with some of these?
I mean, they can buy down 150 basis points.
Yeah,
right. I mean, that's huge, right? And there's enough demand where they can afford that in their margin, and they're still making a solid return on a per home basis by buying down really every loan in there.
Yeah, the new construction seems to the price points. I'm in St. Charles, so out by me, they got up and down Randall Corridor. They got a bunch of, it's more infill and more of the lot completion from back in the day. But the prices, I mean, you can't find anything for under 5.5. The townhomes are $398. You throw you're at $425 when it's all said and done. At best, that's if you got no options. How is that sustainable for a starter home and
it's not a starter home, right? I mean, it's like
how does
traditionally that has not been a starter home, and that's kind of where it is now. How's it sustainable? I don't know. I mean, affordability is a problem, right? And I think the only way we manage that is that wages get better, jobs pay more, right? Because this inflation is definitely sticky. I mean, everything you touch is 30% more expensive than it was 2 years ago, right? Whether it's my phone, my cup of coffee, a house, a new car, whatever it is. And I'm no economist, but I can see it. Inflation sticks, right? It doesn't just go away. So I think the only way that a $400,000 home becomes entry-level home is that people have to make more money, right?
You have builder blood, entrepreneur blood, real estate blood, finance blood, all in you. How do you take advantage of this from a standpoint of affordable housing or creation of units that could become affordable, or at least in a price point that's below $600,000?
Yeah. Well, what I believe sort of reluctantly over the past 8 years is that build for rent is probably the answer. Because if you would have asked me 6-7 years ago, a guy who grew up building homes, like nobody's going to build a whole subdivision of single family homes and want to rent them. But over time, as the product has become more refined, and they don't really do it a lot here, right? It's in other markets. It's difficult here because of the taxation and the entitlements process is difficult to get through. But I'm actually working on one transaction now with a group that's looking to build a really cool build to rent product. I don't know if they'll get it approved. Maybe it's 50-50 shot, right? Very capable developer, has done a ton of development in every asset class. So they've got the chops and they've got the capital to pull it off. But I think that's the answer. And I think it's because whereas my generation probably would say, when I'm going to a house, I want to own the house. It's just a new mindset where you don't necessarily have to anymore. So I think that's the answer for affordability, other than, people just being comfortable with a lesser product in the home that they're buying, right? Because the only way you can build something affordably now is to cut something and make it less expensive, right? Because cost of construction certainly isn't coming down.
Yeah. I think it's getting down to, it's not even that, our generation, you want to own and you don't want to rent and all that. But I think it's going to come down to these future generations. It's not even an option. Like,
Yeah.
It's either 600 or I rent.
Right. And that's Europe, right?
Yeah.
That's how it is in Europe. People rent for their lifetime over there, and it's just normal, right? And I think there's a big shift for the American mindset to get their mind around that, but I think it's kind of forcefully happening, right? And I think it helps too that people can move easily these days for work, and they can work remotely, and that's a whole other conversation on how effective remote work is and whether the office is dead and all that. But I think in terms of how it affects housing is that maybe people don't want to be anchored, and kids who watch their parents choke from owning a home in 2007, 2008, those scars run deep, right? So maybe they're thinking, hey, I don't want to ever get caught in that position. So they'd rather rent, right? Got plenty of expendable income. I mean, we see it out in the suburbs now. There's been a COVID push, and you get two incomes that are really strong, and maybe they don't want to spend their money on the downstroke for a home where everyone told them that was the best investment they can make in their life, when they've got, a phone investment account where they can make more money in the short term than increasing the equity on their home. So I don't think they're wrong. It's just a different mindset.
I only know of the one build to rent that happened in I think it's Oswego. Is there other ones that have been approved?
Well, yeah, that's built. Continental built that. I actually sold that site. And they're in lease up now. It's working out pretty well. There's two more out there in process. Oswego was kind of open-minded to the product type. And credit to them, the reason they were on board with Continental doing it was that Continental had done a multifamily property in their community, and it went really well. So they said, hey, you're a capable developer. But there are not a ton more. And if they are, they're small, or they're, like attached product. It's not clearly single family. And I think it's because the municipalities here just haven't gotten their mind around it yet. I think it's going to take a little bit of time.
You do a little of everything on the commercial side. What's kind of the breakdown between industrial, office, land, like percentage wise, that you really focus on or make your money on?
I've never actually thought about it that way in terms I probably should. Good suggestion. But honestly, the reason I don't have a specific focus was because of the downturn. I promised myself, and there's a lot of brokers out there who focus on an asset class. They do really, really well, and they're a great resource. So it's a great business model. But the reason I've tried to steer away from solely focusing on one asset class all the time was because, before the downturn, we were really lean, pretty sizable developer, right? Ran our own operations, sometimes did our own tradesman work, right? And I think we were so focused on being in the business that I wasn't focusing on being on the business, or focusing on the business, and I wasn't looking up to see the freight train that was coming at me, right? And I said, look, I'm going to make sure I'm never in that situation again. So if there does happen to be a freight train, I at least can see it coming from a little farther away. So I think what's happened is, because of my development background and the team we have at John Green, who have a lot of the similar attributes, is that I've become kind of a developer broker, right? And it's led me to other relationships where we'll find a site. We found a site for Prologis in Bolingbrook a few years back, and it was a good site. Brought them the site, they developed it. We did the lease up for them, worked out really well. So, that relationship was managed from the ground up site. We did the same thing with a group, Conneely Properties, out in West Chicago a few years back. Continental, who I mentioned, I do a lot of work finding sites for them here, and that came from another relationship. They're multifamily guys, and what I do in those situations is I say, hey, let's sit down and let's underwrite a deal you already did, so that I can, at least from 30,000 feet, know that I'm not wasting your time or my time when I bring a site to you, right? So I can back of the napkin underwrite it. And I think in doing that, it gives you the ability to understand each asset class a little bit more. So I think it changes percentage-wise. I think right now, if I went by the past year, it's probably 50% industrial, 25% multifamily, 25% home builders. Office has been pretty stagnant. That's me personally. The rest of our team, there's been a fair amount of retail leasing. Restaurants have been active the past few years, and a handful of investment sales deals on the multifamily and retail side. So it changes, based on where our client base is going, and we kind of let them lead us. That's really what happened in the downturn too, is we were connecting cash with distress, right? And it led us to all kinds of geographies. I mean, you were doing it too, you end up, you learn a new geography real quick if you knew you had a decent site. So I think it changes every year, but right now that's what it would amount to.
In the, call it Western DuPage, Will, or Western Will, Kane, who's buying land right now? Are people really land banking? Are they like, is transactions not happening?
Well, it's tougher. It's tougher to buy because the capital markets have constrained things, but home builders are buying land because the demand is there. Industrial developers were really heavy. It's been harder for them to do it the past year based on the interest rate environment we're in, but they're still going because the demand is still there on the tenant side. It's the I-55 corridor is like 4%, 3% vacancy right now, I think.
Is there spec being built still and improved, or is it all?
It's tough to get spec up right now. Although we're working on 2 deals now where at the end of last year, they were really, bearish on the idea that they'd be able to pull a new capital stack together. And as of the past 30, 45 days, that story has changed. I think what's changed is developers were leading the product conversation when the interest rate environment was low. The money's leading that conversation now, saying, hey, this is what we're more comfortable with risk-wise. Can you shrink this building, turn this building, phase this project? But they're still getting done. I think everyone's been trying to figure out, are we in for a soft landing, a hard landing? And I had a great conversation the other day, and they said, maybe we've already landed. We don't even know it yet, right? So I think we had so many rough times and so many good times that nobody understood what a normal economy was, which lies somewhere in the middle, right? Where there's pockets of strengths and pockets of weakness. And I think that's where we are right now. And it's reflective in the land environment. So there are a handful of people out there buying land, but
are they buying cash? Or are they getting financing? What banks?
Like
that type
well,
of
local banks,
debt?
it's tough for large tracts, but bigger developers, it's regional banks that'll still stay involved. I think what I've seen from lenders are relationships they already had. They're stockpiling their good investment decisions for them rather than taking on new clients. The equity, I don't know. It's tough. There's a lot of money out there to be invested, but you got to jump through a lot of hoops to convince them. And then users, Microsoft, the data guys, they don't need to borrow money, right? They got plenty of cash, so they're buying land. And some manufacturers that we've spoken to. And then, like I said, the home builders, they don't need a bank. The nationals don't. That's another reason why the local guys can't necessarily compete with them for the dirt.
You hear a lot of headlines about places or companies like Microsoft or big money buying up the cornfields and all that in Illinois. Is that real?
Hell yeah. Yeah, they just bought a site in Yorkville, 500 acres out there because of the power and the utility out there. And if it was in O'Hare, they'd have to pay 15 times what they'd pay, and they couldn't get the same amount of acreage.
When you say power, what does that mean?
Heavy power for data usage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's for developers past 2-3 years, the ability to get power has been a huge constraint in terms of just ability to get it and timing for ComEd or whoever the local municipality might be to deliver it. So power matters, especially, the new economy and data. I mean, like I said, I'm no economist. I'm also no tech guy, but I know that my kids have phones and look at those things pretty religiously. So if there's a need for it now, imagine what it'll be like in 20 years.
We're going to name this episode, He's Not an Economist, but listen to him.
Yeah, I like that.
What? So, man, you've been in this a long time. You've gone through ups and downs. You're educated in the finance side. Like, what are you doing today to better yourself, or to grow, or to become a better version of yourself?
Always trying to learn from clients, really. You know, I'm 46. I've got 3 kids. Got college around the corner. So obviously, the past 10 years, I spent a lot of time being a dad. But down the road, you know, I'm having these conversations with my wife now about like, wow, college is here, and you know, before we know it, it'll just be us in this house. So, you know, I'm looking to be more invested rather than just, you know, a fee broker, which we've started doing the past few years. One thing that's really cool about being a brokerage house like ours, where it's kind of small and personal, we see opportunities out there, obviously, and we've invested in a few land deals the past couple of years opportunistically, just seeing where the market was going. It was a speculative play, and it's working out. But we've got a small group, and we can say, hey, who's interested in investing in this deal? Tim usually leads the charge because we want to make sure that we don't threaten our clients, right, to think that we're a competitor. And usually what ends up happening is a few of our key clients will end up investing with us. So we've been focused on that. I think my shift personally is to look for stuff that's a little more cash flow based than, you know, those land deals. They pay for themselves, but it's not like a cash flow play. It's really, you know, a 3X, 4X in X amount of years in terms of the analysis. So, you know, I used to own some multifamily, I used to own some retail, don't own it anymore, but now I'm thinking that might be the next play. So I might be back here for one of your meetings on multifamily investing.
You come back here and you can teach it. All right, I'll make you the deal. What CrossFit, man? I Googled you. When I was Googling getting ready for this, I saw you won some contests, or you won some competition.
I didn't win a contest. I went to a contest.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think there was 16 teams, and we took 15th. So we were not last place. But the 16th team was my brother, so I got bragging rights over him.
That's all that counts in a family like yours.
Or my brother's buddies, sorry. That was a few years ago. So yeah, I do CrossFit.
Do you do it on a regular basis? Like what?
Yeah, so I used to play a lot of basketball, and going back 7 years or so, I used to play in the Monday Night League, and me and my buddies ended up being the oldest guys in that Monday Night League. And I blew my ankle a few times, and I came home one night, and my wife was like, you know, are you done with this now?
Oh, no.
So I said, she was right. And I said, I got to do something, and I got to do something I don't know how to do, because the stuff I do know how to do, my body and my brain are on 2 different levels, right? That don't understand what I can and can't do anymore. So I just started doing it because I had a buddy who was doing it, and I slowly got addicted to it. And pre-COVID, I was going 6-7 days a week pretty aggressively. Yeah, first thing in the morning. And COVID slowed me down. I haven't necessarily been able to get back to that same pace, but it's 4 days a week, you know.
That's huge.
Yeah, and it's
4 days more than most people wish they were going.
Well, and you know, I've always another reason I've stayed committed to it. My father passed away last year, and he had dementia, and obviously, the older you get, you start thinking about your genes and your genetics, right, and your DNA. So everything says the best way to fight is to stay in shape and stay healthy and active. So
have you read the book Why We Sleep?
No.
So Why We Sleep got me started down this health kick. But one of the bigger things they talked about was studies tied to not sleeping, getting quality sleep, tied to Alzheimer's and dementia later on. So maybe that's something you could check out. But good book. It's very detailed. I used to be the guy that used to brag and say, I could get over 4 hours and I'm that guy. But I realized after reading that book, I scared myself that I'm shaving years off my life on the back end because I'm not getting the everything restored every night. So.
Right. Well, I got a Whoop like 5 months ago, and it tracks your sleep, and I've become like a sleep geek now, and like, you know, it measures your recovery and all that.
Yeah.
You know, huge. The idea is what's measured is managed, but it's kind of, I don't know, it might have heightened my anxiety.
Yeah, it does one of 2 things. It either helps you get better or makes you think, why did I get this thing?
Right.
Because, you know, sometimes the sleep score, I got the Fitbit, and, you know, if it's like, I didn't get enough deep sleep, and then it's like during the day, I'm like, I feel this way because I didn't get enough deep sleep. And you start like tying how you feel during the day to what you saw on the on your phone earlier this morning. So
It's also taught me that beer and vodka are not the greatest thing for your
they
recovery.
definitely disturb your sleep. So, well, Shamus, man, it's been awesome having you on here today. How can people find you? What value are you looking to add to people here in the Chicago real estate market?
I'm with John Green Commercial Real Estate. We're out in Naperville. You can find me via the web. Google me. I'm out there. What value I'm looking to add? Just constantly build some more relationships. I've been doing this all my life. I've got a unique background. I'm a firm believer that if you're a giver, it comes back to you. So it's just, if someone needs advice, a conversation, happy to talk them through it. Not necessarily chasing listings when I talk to people. I think that's always made me feel, as a developer, always made me feel a little, skittish when someone felt like the hard push. So if anyone's out there and needs a little bit of advice or advisement on their investment decisions, I'm always here.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, man, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, sir.